Hey, what's going on, everybody? So I just wanted to give everyone a really quick update on the possibility that R. Kelly's case could be dropped, right? R. Kelly's case could be dropped and he could go free. And we're going to get into that. But, first I just want to say that early on I actually released a video that I had actually recorded earlier. Now, I recorded this video with the intentions of actually releasing it later. And up top, there should be a link right about now for that video. And that video basically talked about how the prosecutors are actually trying to keep R. Kelly from getting information about his case, right? So this video is really a standalone video. It's not really about that video, but I mean, they're related. I think the timing of everything, I actually tried to shelf that video because I wanted to release it later. But in the meantime, this news came out, so I just wanted to make everyone aware that, they're related. But this video stands on its own, right?
I call it saving money by customizing car insurance with Liberty Mutual.
So there's a strong possibility that R. Kelly could be just set free, right? And we're going to get into it right about now, right? So this is a court order in the United States District Court, Eastern District of New York. And of course, this case is United States versus Robert Sylvester Kelly. Interestingly enough, this is a court order coming from Ann Donnelly. Now, people have been complaining about, well, at least the supporters, we've been complaining about Ann Donnelly for a while. Some people are actually saying that she has a conflict of interest in this case. Other people are saying that, she's anti-Kells, and every motion that the R. Kelly team has put in, she's always ruled against it. So I just find it interesting that she would be the one to actually check the government on withholding information. And this kind of, it's just kind of ironic to me, right? But this is a victory on two levels. First is a victory because R. Kelly is going to get the information he needs to actually defend himself in this trial, right? Second, it has broad implications because it's implying, or it sets up the possibility that R. Kelly could just simply go free as it relates to the New York case, right? So it goes on and it reads this way. This order is entered pursuant to Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 5F to confirm the prosecution's disclosures obligation under Brady v. Maryland and its progeny to summarize the possible consequences of violating those obligations, right? So here's the thing. First, we should know the importance of Brady v. Maryland. So it's important that we understand what this is so that we can understand what's going on here, right? So Brady v. Maryland is a case, and I'm just going to summarize everything. Brady v. Maryland is a case where Brady had an accomplice, and him and that accomplice planned to steal a guy's car, except the accomplice goes off and he actually kills the owner of the car, who we'll just call a victim at this point, right? So the accomplice ends up testifying that, hey, I killed the victim on my own. I was by myself. It was all me. The prosecutors wanted to get both Brady and his accomplice on maximum charges. So what they do is that they separate the trial, and they take Brady and they give Brady his own trial, and then they give the accomplice his own trial, right? So they don't tell Brady that his accomplice has already pleaded guilty to actually killing.
Pop quiz. What's the fastest way to raise your credit score? Is it A, pay your bills on time, B, hire a credit repair agency, C, remove inquiries, or D, none of the above? The answer may surprise you, because if you're one of the 150...
The victim. Brady ends up getting convicted of the crime, and then the lady comes back and he basically appeals the case. He comes back and he says, hey, you didn't tell me that my accomplice pled guilty to the crime. He's already pled guilty, so why are you trying to convict me? And this case, in and of itself, shows you how dirty prosecutors can be. They know that his accomplice has already pled guilty to the crime, yet they're still going to try and come back and get him for the crime, right? Now, we all know that there's something whereby if you're rolling with someone and you're in the commission of a crime and that person kills someone, you're guilty of that crime as well. This is not that. They actually wanted to argue that Brady participated in the actual murder. So, of course, Brady wins his appeal, and there's a landmark decision, and that decision basically says that the prosecution must give exculpatory evidence to the defense. Any evidence that could basically set him free, you have to hand that over to him, right? So that's the importance of Brady v. Maryland. It's important to basically understand, the context of this, because what Ann Donnelly is saying, she goes, and its progeny, and to summarize the possible consequences of violating those obligations. So Ann Donnelly is saying the prosecution has an obligation, and the prosecution could be punished if they don't follow through with their obligation. That's what they're saying here. So keep that in mind, because it's going to be important at the end of this video, right? Then it goes on. The prosecution must disclose to the defense all information favorable to an accused, that is, material either to guilt or to punishment, and that is known to the prosecution. This obligation applies regardless of whether or not the information would itself constitute admissible evidence. The prosecution shall disclose such information to the defense promptly after its existence becomes known to the prosecution, so the defense may make an effective use of the information in the preparation of its case, right? Then it goes on, and she goes, the prosecution must also disclose any information that can be used to impeach the trial testimony of the prosecution witnesses within the meaning of Giglio versus United States and its progeny. Such information must be disclosed sufficiently in advance of trial for the defendants to make an effective use of it at trial, or at such other times the court may order, right? So, this is basically the meat and potatoes of this order. Let's talk about Giglio versus United States. So Giglio versus United States is a situation where you had this guy running around writing bad checks, and there was actually a witness in the case, and the government or the prosecutors didn't tell Giglio that one of the actual witnesses was given immunity to testify against Giglio, right? So why is this important? Because the judge is saying that not only do they have to turn over any evidence that's actually in this trial.
Were you recently injured in a car accident? Look at this check for $160,000.
They also have to turn over any evidence or any knowledge of people being granted plea deals. And this is pretty significant because, as we know, there are potentially lots of people in this case who probably have a plea deal, right? One such person is going to be Lisa Van Allen. Think about it. And this is my own opinion, but you're essentially trying, and this is in Illinois, right? But you're essentially trying to convict R. Kelly of purchasing pornography, buying or selling or purchasing pornography. You guys may know that Lisa Van Allen, she took some of the tapes from R. Kelly's library, allegedly, and then she's coming back and she's trying to sell some of those tapes back to R. Kelly, allegedly, right? We don't know if any of this stuff is true. Now, if you're going to convict R. Kelly of trying to purchase pornography, shouldn't you be trying to convict Lisa Van Allen for selling the very same thing that you're accusing R. Kelly is purchasing? So that basically means you're probably going to give her a plea deal, right? And I'm not going to say probably, it means you have. You've given her a plea deal because these allegations came up in almost 2 years ago, and we haven't heard of Lisa Van Allen being convicted of trying to sell pornography over interstate lines. We haven't heard anything like that. So to me, from deduction, we can only deduce that she's been given a plea deal. Now, here's another possible plea deal. Another possible plea deal is that allegedly one of the witnesses in the 2008 trial, well, the only witness in the 2008 trial, supposedly, allegedly, was supposed to testify against R. Kelly, right? And that's going to be, regarding the notorious video that we know of in the 2008 trial. Allegedly, the young lady in that trial has come out and said that they were going to testify against R. Kelly, allegedly. Now, here's the thing. If she's coming out to testify, after all these years, if it was actually her, why didn't she come out to testify before? I deduced that she's coming out to testify because there was some sort of threat made towards her and her parents. They probably threatened to lock up her parents. They probably threatened to lock her up for some type of conspiracy to defraud the United States.
People choose Sonobello Boston because they remove stubborn body fat in just one visit. I'm actually...
And if she doesn't cooperate, then they're going to lock her up and they're going to lock R. Kelly's parents up. Now, of course, this is something that's going to be relevant from the perspective of Giglio v. United States, right? So all of these plea deals that potentially were handed out in this R. Kelly trial has to be revealed to R. Kelly's defense team. That's why this order is so important. What happens if they don't turn over the alleged evidence they have against R. Kelly? What happens if they don't reveal the plea deals that they have? Well, I'm going to show you what can happen. And this is coming from Judge Ann Donnelly, right? Because this is her order. Well, one of the things that she could do is that she can specify the terms and condition of producing the evidence or the plea deals. One another thing she can do is she can simply grant a continuance. She can impose evidentiary sanctions, meaning that she can sanction the government. I don't know what type of sanctions you could do to the government, maybe fines and fees and things of that nature. To me, that's not going to be really effective because it's the government. You're assigning someone with deep pocket a fee, and the fee will probably be, the sanction will probably be something like $1,000 or something silly. That's my thinking. Another thing that she can do is that she can impose sanctions on any lawyer for the prosecution responsible for violations of the prosecution's disclosure obligations. And that's going to be pretty significant because if I'm a lawyer working this case, I don't want to put my livelihood online, just to be vindictive to destroy a man's life. I don't want to put my livelihood online. I don't think anyone wants to put their livelihood online unless they're emotionally involved in the case. Now, lawyers are supposed to be somewhat impartial. At least that's my own opinion. So I don't see lawyers putting themselves on the line to prosecute R. Kelly, right? So if they need to give up this information, they're going to disclose it. They're not going to put not only their lives on the line, but also the lives of their family, who they have to take care of, and their good name. They're not going to do that, right? So when it comes down to it, I believe most people is just going to go ahead and give up the information, go ahead and basically tell Kells who got plea deals, so on and so forth, right? Another thing that could actually happen is that she could dismiss charges before trial or vacate a conviction after trial or guilty plea. Let me read that again. She can dismiss charges before trial or vacate a conviction after trial or a guilty plea. So this is pretty significant because basically what can happen is that, first off, I think they're withholding this information because they know that their case is weak against R. Kelly. And they know that handing this information over is going to make it obvious on its face that they don't really have a case. And if they've given any plea deals out, that's going to basically make their case even weaker, because now they have to say, hey, I gave out this plea deal, and this guy is coming to testify against Kales, right? So now the jury's going to know, well, hey, he's only testifying because he was in trouble, right? And he had a plea deal, and he's basically just trying to get himself out the hot seat, right? So this could be potentially something that might apply to Richard Arline Jr. Now, I don't know that he got a plea deal, but to me, it doesn't make sense to just go ahead and plead guilty when you don't get anything in return. At the very least, you can fight, right? So maybe some people, they may be emotionally distraught, and they may want to just go ahead and admit that they committed a crime, but that's not the way this game is played, right? The way this game is played is that you go to court and you fight, and you try to, even if you testify, you want to try to get a lesser sentence, right? So to me, his guilty plea just doesn't make sense, right? Doesn't make sense. So I believe that he's actually gotten a plea deal, and if that's true, that would have to be revealed in the New York case if he's indeed going to try to testify to the RICO charges, which I believe he is going to, right? So this case can be dismissed. There's a strong chance of that happening. Now, I'm going to admit, I don't know what type of evidence they have. And, well, now I'm going to admit, I did do a video where I did go over the evidence against R. Kelly, right? And that video list is kind of an index of all the evidence that they plan to use in the beginning of the trial. I do know more evidence has since come about, and I think this is the evidence that they're trying to get copies of, right? So I'm going to admit, I don't know if this evidence is strong or weak. I mean, I really don't know, even though I did the video, and I'm going to post a link to that video up top. If you want to see the list of evidence they supposedly have against R. Kelly, in the first round when they collected evidence, click this card above or the link above, and you can watch the video where I actually go through a list of all the evidence. But there's also a second list of evidence that they got from some locker or something like that. And I don't know what's in that, right? And I don't know how strong or weak any of this evidence is. I'm going to say this. If the evidence that they have is weak, it's going to come out. If people have received plea deals, it has to come out. And if they fail to comply with this order, then the only thing that they can do, I think the fair thing to do, is just simply dismiss the case against R. Kelly. Now, I want to know what you think. Leave your questions and comments below. Let me know if you, number one, think that there's any strong evidence in this case. Number two, I want to know if you think there are any plea deals in this case. And actually, it's not really a question of if there are plea deals, because I believe if there wasn't any plea deals, they wouldn't be talking about plea deals, right? So that's what this case law refers to. Giglio v. United States, this is a case where Giglio basically was being accused of writing bad checks, and there was someone who was testifying against him, and that person had a plea deal. So this is what this case is about. So I don't think they will be mentioning this if there weren't any potential plea deals, or if the defense didn't suspect that there were plea deals. So leave your questions and comments down below. I want to know what you think. Do you think there is any plea deals? Which is really not a question, but the real question is, who do you think got a plea deal? In my opinion, I think Lisa Van Allen potentially got a plea deal. I think Richard Arline Jr. potentially got a plea deal. I think that the young lady and her father and her parents from the 2008 trial potentially got a plea deal. Those are all the people I suspect that has a plea deal or were offered a plea deal. And I think they're trying to give Don Russell a plea deal, but something's going on with that. He hasn't taken it yet, because if he had, we would have, heard a guilty plea or something like that, right? Or maybe they're planning to unleash the plea deal at the right possible time, right? Let me know what you think. Those are my thoughts on the evidence and the potential plea deals. I want to hear from you what you think in terms of how strong the evidence is and who potentially got a plea deal. That's it for this. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave your questions and comments below.